Hello, everybody. All right, welcome to the Mikestand. Today is Friday, June the 20th, 2025. Hopefully, everybody's has had a good week this week and is prepared for the weekend. Of course, we're going to give people a chance to come in before we get started. Um, let's see. Let's see now. Let me see. Well, today I did watch some, in my cartoon watching, got into May of 1938. Some of the cartoons came out there, in which, of course, watched Porky Pig episode Engine Trouble, among others. Saw another new Universal cartoon short. They claimed that that Oswald Rabbit was in it, but actually it was his dog Elmer and a supporting character of his, Henrietta Hen, of course, with the main character for the story being Wee Willie Wildcat. So, yeah, let me see if I can go find some more. If I can find anybody who I hadn't shared it with yet. All right, so let's see now. What else can we talk about? Well, all right. Well, we got three people in here, so I guess I'll talk about what's on tap tonight. I got a couple of articles to go over. One from Bounty in the Comments, one from Me TV Tunes. One of them is going to be, of course, talking about. So one of the writers from the I think it's J.M. DeMatteis claims that he didn't even bother giving any input on the, I guess, sequel series that they're coming out with, as he believed they wouldn't take any of his suggestions anyways. And also on the Me TV Tunes side of it, an interesting article about how Betty Boop is still relevant in today's culture. So, and aside from that, of course, we have the wrestling wrap up, looking back to last night's Impact and Ring of Honor shows, looking ahead to tonight's SmackDown, as well as tomorrow night's Collision on AEW. And then we'll wrap things up with this day in each history. So I guess with all that being said, why don't I go ahead get started then? I'll just go right into the articles here, as it were. And if you guys can help out by liking and sharing the stream, see if we can get some more friendly people in here to engage, that'd be appreciated. Also, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions, and I'll try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. But with that being said, let's get started here. Original Spider-Man, the animated series writer, quote, not involved, unquote, with Spider-Man 94 sequel comic, quote, I have long ago abandoned all expectation that Marvel would acknowledge any of my contributions, unquote. So I guess this is a sequel comic as opposed to a sequel show itself. Article by Spencer McCooley, published June 19th, 2025. All right, so here we go. After nearly 30 years, Marvel Comics is finally following up on the cliffhanger ending that closed out Spider-Man the Animated Series with Spider-Man 94, an upcoming comic book miniseries set to both resolve the mystery of Mary Jane's disappearance and subsequently introduce the web-slinger to a new bevy of adventures, fights, and drama, all of which, unfortunately, will have no involvement from original series writer John. So it's actually John Semper, not J.M. DeMatteis. All right. Let's see what else is going on here. Let's see. Running 4 issues total, and named after the year in which its source material debuted, Spider-Man 94 will see veteran Spider writer J.M. DeMatteis, who fans may best know for his work on the Kraven's Last Hunt and Clone Saga story arcs, teaming up with current Spider-Verse versus Venomverse Volume 1 artist Jim Towie, to explore just what happened to MJ, the real one, not her Hydro clone, after she was thrown off the George Washington Bridge by the Green Goblin in the series recreation of the night Gwen Stacy died, in parentheses there, fell into a portal and ultimately became trapped in limbo. So this is one of the last things we see of Mary Jane in the series there, with her being kind of floating around in quote unquote limbo, as it were. So y'all might remember that. Mary Jane, who was voiced at the time by Sarah Ballantine, finds herself adrift in limbo in Spider-Man the Animated Series, Season 3, Episode 14, Turning Point. Per the book's official announcement, press release, as provided by Marvel Comics, quote, after searching the ends of the multiverse, Peter Parker, the amazing, the spectacular, the radioactive webhead himself, aka Spider-Man, swings back into the streets of New York City with his beloved Mary Jane Watson in tow. But what's this? One of these villains is not like the other. Witness this universe's debut of not one but 2 of Spider-Man's greatest villains from the comics. Quote, legendary Spider scribe J.M. DeMatteis and rising star artist Jim Towie, bring you the return you've all been waiting 30 years for. And you're never going to expect the twists and turns ahead. For your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, break out the action figures and post up in front of the TV as we bring you back to the greatest era of animated superhero television in history. Had all those cameos on there. Offering his thoughts on his new assignment to IGN, DeMatteis beamed, quote, the 1990s Spider-Man animated series has become a beloved part of Spidey lore. It was the introduction to Peter Parker and his universe for an entire generation, and I'm delighted to be diving back into that universe. Quote, we're treating this as the next season of the show, which means introducing new villains, new challenges, new adventures for Peter, while doing our best to remain true to the creative spirit that John Semper and company established the original show, unquote, he added. Yet, despite supposedly hoping to, quote-unquote, remain true to his, quote-unquote, creative spirit, Semper has revealed that Marvel apparently made zero effort to get his input on Spider-Man 94. Responding to the news via a lengthy post shared to his personal Twitter account, the still working scribe behind such recent animated outings as Justice League Action and Green Lantern Beware My Power explained, quote, I got a text message this morning from my good friend Matt Dunford telling me that Marvel is continuing my Spider-Man animated series in comic book form in a 4-issue limited series called Spider-Man 94. Since I will no doubt be asked about it by fans of the series, no, I am not involved with this comic book, and no one at Marvel approached me to be involved in any way. So for wanting to be true to creative, they chose not to contact him. That's so. I guess there's more their interpretation of what his vision was, not his actual vision. So go figure. That's just what. That's what That's what a lot of these modern day writers and editors seem to be driving at. Quote, Matt's text message was the first I heard of it. The internet tells me that J.M. DeMatteis is the writer of the comic book, and I have nothing but the greatest respect for him. His amazing body of work over the years in both animation and comic books speaks for itself, and I'm positive that the new comic is in great hands. Quote, I hired him years ago to participate in writing um, one episode of my series, parentheses, which ran for 65 episodes, unparentheses, and I thoroughly enjoyed working with him. Where he now chooses to take the series story-wise is entirely his decision. But for the record, they are not my creative choices, nor do they represent any oversight by me. And again, if you guys haven't already, you guys can help out by liking and sharing the stream. See if we can get some more friendly people to engage. That'd be appreciated. Also, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions. And I will try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. All right. So, anyways. All right. Quote, yes, it would have been nice, in parentheses, some might even say respectful, in parentheses, if Marvel had reached out to me at some point as a courtesy. But I have long ago abandoned all expectation that Marvel would acknowledge any contribution to the Marvel, acknowledge any of my contributions to the Marvel Universe, like, for instance, my creation, what is now known as the Spider-Verse, quote unquote, in brackets, as debuted in 1998 during the first half of the series' 2-part finale, Spider Wars Chapter 1, I really, really hate clones. And here's, of course, one of the more famous scenes of it, where the various Spider-Men from all over the Spider-Verse, all of them, of course, voiced by Christopher Daniel Barnes at that time. They all meet together in alternate cells to Spider-Man. All right. Quote, so I wish them, so I wish them well and encourage us all to celebrate with good cheer this 30th anniversary year of Spider-Man the Animated Series, and keep your eyes on all my socials, especially YouTube, because I intend to launch my own celebration of my series in the very near future. In the immortal words of my mentor, Stan the Man, small quotes, enough said. Anyways, I do need to step away. I do need to go off camera here for a moment. So I'm going to put some music on to entertain you guys while I'm gone. But I will be right back. All right, sorry about that. Had to just take care of something real quick there. So now let's go ahead and get back to the article here. Quote, P.S. If you're still reading this far, since I have your attention, I would be remiss not to mention that my latest animated series, Weather Hunts, for which I am one of the executive producers and the one and only head writer, will be debuting on PBS in September. Created by Al Roker, it teaches kids the science of weather and boasts an all-star cast that includes LeVar Burton, Cheryl Lee Ralph, and Holly Robinson Peete. Also in the cast is Rodney Salisbury, who was the voice of Joe Robbie Robertson in Spider-Man the Animated Series. So gather your kids together and check it out this fall. Excelsior. All right. Featuring variant covers by Nick Bradshaw, Ron Lim, and John Tyler Christopher, the first issue of Spider-Man 94 is currently set to hit shelves on September 3rd. All right, so there we go with that one. There we go with that article. Well, you guys enjoyed that? Got something out of that? So we'll be moving on to the next article here in a moment. And as I said, if you haven't already, you guys can help out by liking and sharing the stream. See if we can get some more friendly people to engage. That'd be appreciated. Also, if anything here grabbed your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions. I'll try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. Oh, here we go. Let's get into this next article here. Little Betty Boop here for everybody. Boop boop be doo. So Susan Wilking Horan on why Betty Boop still resonates today. At almost 100 years old, Betty Boop still has our hearts. Um, still has Betty Boop still has our hearts. Article published today by MeTV2 staff. Yeah, and she came about I think in 1930, 31. We're like 95 years, I guess. So getting close to the 100-year mark. Of course, voiced primarily by Mae Quetzal, with of course occasional work by Bonnie Poe, Margie Hines, and I think a slew of others. Let's see what this article has to say. In an interview with Authority magazine, Susan Wilking Horan was asked why Betty Boop still resonates with audiences today. As a vice president of operations at Fleischer Studios, a role Horan has held for over 25 years, she knows Betty Boop better than anyone. Betty's impact, according to Horan, goes back to the very beginning. Quote, here's an interesting fact. She was created in 1930 by Max Fleischer, just 10 years after the 19th Amendment granted women the right to vote in 1920. So women had only had the vote for a decade when Betty Boop came onto the scene. One of the things she became known for was embracing this newfound independence and freedom that women everywhere were beginning to feel. Now, mind you, we saw Betty in many ways. Well, she went from being a flapper to being, a domestic, and domestic secretary and all that. They even had, a Betty Boop for President cartoon, right? And of course, she was also in the Color Classic featurette, Poor Cinderella. So, which was her only color appearance. Betty was not only an independent woman, but a career woman too. While many today remember Betty as a flapper girl in the cartoons, she worked several different jobs in her wide range of interests and activities. Betty Boop really set the stage for other pop culture characters to come, like Barbie. Quote, in her cartoon, she was a lion tamer, an aviator, a race car driver. She did everything, unquote. Horan said, "Yeah, in fact, in 1937, she even took her act over to China or Japan. Actually, she took her act over to Japan before, of course, Pearl Harbor happened. So quote, and what she did every day was remind women they could do anything they wanted and be anything they wanted to be, unquote. How does Boop still inspire today? Horan explores this subject in Betty Boop's Guide to a Bold and Balanced Life, a book she co-wrote with Christy Ling Spencer. Quote, so with that theme and the values of kindness, positivity, and humor, which is such a big part of her character, we created a book with 10 chapters, each one focused on a different cartoon and the values it created, and the values it expressed, rather. We expand why those values are still important today. From Horan's perspective, each Betty Boop cartoon had a lesson, including being kind, teamwork, standing up to bullies, and even lessons considered ahead of Boop's time, like recycling. Hmm. The positive lessons and values, combined with a joyful approach to independence, resulted in a character who had stuck with us for a century, spreading cheeky positivity to each generation. Quote, the values shown in Betty Boop cartoons from 100 years ago, positivity, humor, kindness, respect, love, family, friendship, those remain the same, unquote, Horan said. Quote, they're timeless. That's why we believe Betty Boop is still so relevant today, unquote. For those who only know Betty Boop from a pop culture icon perspective, it's understandable why they write her off as just a pretty character. But those who know and love her cartoons know a Betty Boop who is kind, fun-spirited, and fearless. And no obstacles ever slows her down. Betty didn't just bring something to the table, but she built the table that all iconic female cartoon characters, now sit at. Watch Popeye and Pals on MeTV Tunes weekdays at 1 p.m. Eastern, 12 noon Central, 10 a.m. Pacific. Da 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 da. All right. So with that being said, of course, now we've pretty much got to the end of the articles I was going to do today. Excuse me one more time. I'm going to go off camera here for a moment, but I'll put some music on while I'm going here. All right, so with that, guess we'll move on to the next portion of the show, which is the wrestling wrap up. As I said, we got stuff from last night's Impact and Ring of Honor to look over, TNA, and we can look ahead to tonight's SmackDown as they continue to build towards next Saturday's Night of Champions as they're filling out the final parts of the bracket for the semifinals in the King and Queen of the Ring tournaments, as well as looking ahead to tomorrow night's Collision on AEW to see what we can look forward to on that. And then, of course, we'll get into this week and this day in Neat's history, and then start to wrap things up. So let's go ahead and get ready to move on to the wrestling wrap up here. So as I said, first I'm going to look back to last night's shows. So first off, I'm going to go ahead and look over on the Ring of Honor Club portion. Ring of Honor. See what happened on last night's Ring of Honor Club, which came to us from the Adrian Phillips Theater at Boardwalk Hall in Atlantic City, New Jersey, with, of course, Caprice Coleman and Ian Riccomani on commentary. Last night's episode saw Lee Moriarty, Ring of Honor peer champion Lee Moriarty and Shane Taylor of Shane Taylor Promotions with Trish Adora in their corner, defeating the team of Anthony Gargone and Sal Manstretta in a pure rules match, in a match to help prepare Diona Purrazzo for her upcoming match in the pure rule, the tournament to crown the first ever women's pure rules champion in Ring of Honor. Diona Purrazzo took on Marty Bell, formerly one half of the former NWA Tag Team Champions, the Hex. Then in just over a minute and a half, Lance Archer defeated Don Callis family's Lance Archer defeated Aaron Solo. Also on last night's show, Tokyo Joshi Pro's Miyu Yamashita defeated Brooke Havoc in just over 3.5 minutes. And in the main event saw the teams of the Martin brothers, Dante and Darius Martin, Top Flight, teaming with the Kingdom, Mike Bennett and Matt Taven, to defeat the team of the Infantry of Carly Bravo and Sean Dean and the Grizzled Young Veterans, James Drake and Zach Gibson. So, of course, they're still, of course, building momentum towards Supercard of Honor coming up on Friday, July the 11th, ahead of, of course, the same weekend that AEW is holding the All-In event, and WWE will be counter-programming that with Saturday night's main event, and then a Saturday night's main event and the Evolution pay-per-view on Sunday. So, anyways, now getting ready to move on to Impact, as now, of course, TNA will be starting their build towards Slammiversary on Sunday, July 20th. Already signed, of course, for that event is the for the X Division title as Moose of the System will be taking on will be answering the challenge of the youngest in charge, Leon Slater. Now, on last night's show, of course, we saw in the opening match, Eric Young defeated Sami Callihan. In a non-title tag team match, the TNA Knockouts champions, the Elegance brand of Ash and Heather by Elegance, with M by Elegance and Personal Concierge in their corner, defeated the team of TNA Knockouts champion Masha Slamovich and Lei Ying Lee. In a tag team match, Matt Cardona and the Hometown Man defeated the System's Eddie Edwards and JDC in a via DQ. As after the match, the System was looking to beat down Cardona, only for Brian Myers to show some confliction there in that. And the main event saw in a 10-man tag team match. This was the Champions Challenge, in which on one side you had all of TNA's champions, the X Division, all of TNA's men's division champions. So you had Moose, the X Division champion, Steve Macklin, the international champion, the Nemesis, the TNA tag team champions, and Trick Williams, the TNA world champion, taking on their prospective challengers of Elijah, former TNA world heavyweight champion Joe Hendry, Leon Slater, as we said, set to take on Moose at Slammiversary, and the Radicals of Trey Miguel and Zachary Wentz. So that's all that happened on last night's show. Now we're going to look ahead to tonight, as we will be looking ahead to. First off, we'll be looking ahead to tonight's SmackDown. As I pull that up, as again, WWE will be having some more of the qualifying matches for the King and the Queen tournament, which will be concluding at next week's Night of Champions event in Saudi Arabia. So tonight's SmackDown will be coming to everybody from the Van Andel Arena in Grand Rapids, Michigan on USA Network. In the King of the Ring semifinal match, Randy Orton will be taking on Sami Zayn, with, of course, the winner advancing to the finals next Saturday at in Saudi Arabia at Night of Champions. And in the Queen of the Ring semifinals, and I think you'll have a couple more of the semifinals on this Monday night's Raw. Asuka will be taking on Alexa Bliss in the women's semifinal match. As they'll be as the winner of that will, of course, again be advancing to the Night of Champions match. And then in a non-title match, undisputed champion John Cena will be taking on Ron Killings. Ron Killings, who was recently whose contract was recently allowed to expire, was recently re-signed by the WWE after the basically the crowd started taking over the shows with "We Want Truth" chants. Just goes to show you that sometimes the fans can get what they want. They push hard enough for it and they fight for it. So that's all we got for the WWE news. So now let's look ahead to tomorrow night's Collision, as we will talk about what to look forward to on tonight's Collision, as of course AEW will be pushing their way towards actually there is one more. I think there is one more thing I need to also tonight, before we do get to tomorrow night, because I just remembered this too. I believe as part of their trip down to Mexico, of course. So tonight, the 20th here, CMLL, which has been doing shows did shows with AEW this week, and tonight they'll be co-producing a show with AEW and New Japan Pro Wrestling. On tonight's show from Arena Mexico in Mexico City, Federal District, Mexico, you're seeing a non-title match. Ring of Honor World Women's Champion Red Velvet will be taking on Kira. Thunder Rosa from AEW will be taking on La Jarochita. In an eight-man tag match, you'll see AEW's The Crew, Action Andretti, and Leo Rush teaming with New Japan's Robbie X and Rocky Romero, who's also in the Don Callis family right now. Going up against Los Desperados, CMLL's Los Desperados of Magnus and Rugido, as well as Galeon Fantasma, Defunto, and Zadokan Jr. Another singles match, CMLL's Ultimo Guerrero takes on New Japan's Yoda. In a six-man tag match, New Japan's Hiromu Takahashi, Shingo Takagi, and Titan be taking a United Empire duo of Francisco Kira and New Japan Strong Tag Team Champions Templario and TJP. Volador Jr. from CMLL will be taking on AEW's Ricochet in a one-on-one match. In what they call a lightning match down in Mexico, which I'm guessing is some kind of time limited. I guess some kind of time limited match. The Jet Kevin Knight of AEW will be taking on Neon. Let's see. Ring of Honor World Champion Bandito teams with Hologram to take on El Sky team of Mascara Dorado and Mystico. The main event will see Mercedes Moné, who recently won the CMLL World Women's title this past Wednesday on Dynamite from Zuxius, will be answering the challenge of La Catalina. So that's all that's happening on, of course, tonight's CMLL event. So now, as we get ready to look ahead to tomorrow night's Collision, as I was originally going to do before, and I believe tomorrow night's Collision will be live as well. Let me just go grab that. So it looks like they're going to be taping 2 Collision events there. Tonight's show will be live. It looks like they don't have any matches announced as of yet for that show. So tomorrow night's Collision will be coming from the Accesso Showwear Center in Kent, Washington. Of course, it will likely be Tony Schiavone and Nigel McGuinness on commentary on that show. This is the 98th episode of Collision, so just a couple more away from 100. So I guess they'll be taping. Well, they'll be doing that show tomorrow night live, and then also taping. I guess next week's show will be taped as well. So while we're at this here, of course, let's go ahead and take a quick peek around and see the updated cards, as it were, for the upcoming pay-per-views, PLEs. So the first one that we're going to get, of course, will be next Saturday's the next Saturday's Night of Champions from Saudi Arabia. So let me go grab that. So next week's Saudi Arabia, next week's Night of Champions, which will happen on June the 28th, 2025, from the Kingdom Arena in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Of course, you'll have the Queen and King of the Ring finals matches there. As of course we have, as I said, we have 2 of the semifinal matches happening tonight for one of each, and then you'll have the other 2 probably this Monday on Monday Night Raw. Dominic Mysterio, as set up this past Monday, will be defending the Intercontinental title against AJ Styles. Then, as I previously mentioned, John Cena, the undisputed champion, will be defending the title against CM Punk on next Sunday's show. So that's all for that one thus far. Well, let's see. And of course, WWE, as we said, well, let's take and also what you can look forward to at the Saturday night, because I do know they already have a match signed for Saturday night's main event on the 12th from Atlanta, Georgia, which will be on NBC, of course. State Farm Arena in Georgia. The one match that's been signed for that will be Goldberg's final match as Gunther defends the WWE World Heavyweight Championship against Goldberg at Saturday night's main event on the 12th in a match that is that basically is opposing AEW's show that weekend. So now I'm going to take a quick peek at the Ring of Honor again to try to see if we can find out if they signed any matches for the Super Card of Honor as of yet. Which I don't think they have because they still got a couple of weeks to do so, though. So on Friday, July the 11th, from the Esports Stadium Arlington in Arlington, Texas, Ring of Honor will be holding the Super Card of Honor, and they too have, as of yet, not put any matches up, as it were. So now, looking ahead to AEW's the All In card, matches that are already signed for All In include, as soon as I find that, All In Texas, which is coming from the Globe Life. Let's see, the Globe Life Field in Arlington, Texas, basically the home of the baseball Texas Rangers. In a unification match to basically crown the first AEW Unified title, AEW International Champion Kenny Omega will be taking on AEW Continental Champion Kazuchika Okada. The winner will unify the titles into the Unified Championship. Toni Storm will be defending the AEW Women's World title against Mercedes Moné. And Jon Moxley will be defending the AEW World title against Hangman Adam Page. So that's pretty much all I got for the wrestling wrap-up. So a lot to take in there. So now, with all that being said, with today being Friday, June the 20th, 2025, let's take a look back at this day in Neat's history. So let's see, 2015 on each, all right? Alrighty then. So, first off, I'm going to head all the way back to the year 2001. On this date in the year 2001, the 10th issue of Outlaw Nation from DC's Vertigo line went on sale on newsstands on this date back in 2001. So for $2.50 was 32 pages. The name of the story was Strange Fruit, written by Jamie Delano, with Goran Parloff on pencils, inking done by Goran Suzuka. Robert Solanovic did the lettering, and Noel Giddings did the coloring. So the 10th issue of Outlaw Nation, DC Vertigo's line, went on sale on newsstands on this date back in the year 2001. Well, moving ahead now, as we come to the end there on that one. Moving ahead to the next week, we move ahead to the year 2005. As on this date in the year 2005, this being the Go Home Raw before that year's King of the Ring, as we're of course doing the King of the Ring tournament now as part of the Night of Champions event in Saudi Arabia, but back in this time period, it was King of the Ring was a full-on event with the course, the crowning of the king and queen of the king of the ring at the time. The Go Home Raw before King of the Ring that came from the America West Arena in Phoenix, Arizona. They also had the draft lottery that night. The matches saw, of course, the main event saw Kurt Angle team with Triple H beat Batista and Shawn Michaels. In the lead up to that match, of course, Batista defeated Kurt Angle via DQ. The show, you also saw John Cena retain the WWE Championship over Muhammad Hassan. And the show opened up with Carlito defeating Shelton Benjamin for the Intercontinental title at the beginning of the show. So there you go. So 20 years ago today, WWE held its Monday Night Raw event from the America West Arena as the go-home show before that year's King of the Ring event. And finally, we had to the year 2020. 2020 is just so nice that we're going to actually hit it twice. Or I'm sorry, not 2020, 2015. 2015 was just so nice that we're going to hit it twice. As on this day in 2020 in Japan, first off, Vanguard Animation CG animated film Get Squirrely. Get Squirrely premiered in Japanese theaters on this date back in the year 2015. It was an American animated heist comedy film produced by John H. Williams through Vanguard Animation and Don Kresch, and directed by Ross Venaker. Released on, that was the main release title date, but it was that was the U.S. release title date, November 4th, but it was actually released in Japan on this date in the year 2015. So, this is Vanguard Animation's first theatrically released feature film since 2010's Space Chimps 2, Zartog Strikes Back, to avoid competition with 2014's The Nut Job. However, the film received mixed reviews. So that's that. And also on this date in 2015 in Japan, another animated movie. This is more of an anime movie. Production IG's Ghost in the Shell, the new movie. Ghost in the Shell, the new movie. Premiered on this date back in 2015. Production IG's Ghost in the Shell, new movie. I don't think many of you probably remember, many of you probably remember the Ghost in the Shell movies and all that, and television show, the franchise. This is a new movie that came out in 2015. Let's take a look at see if we can. Premise. Set after the events of Arise, the film involves the assassination of the Prime Minister of Japan, which is publicly described as the, quote, greatest event since the war, unquote, is up to Public Security Section 9, led by Major Motoko Kusanagi, to discover the true nature of the murder. They are aided by the Prime Minister's son, Osamu Fujimoto. Oh, there we go with that. Space Chimps movie sucks. All right. All right, so with that being said, I thank everybody for being here tonight. I hope everybody enjoyed the show. Of course, we'll be back here on Sunday. I'll have the Metal from the Vomitorium joining me, and we'll be finishing up our coverage of books that went on sale in May of 1940. This week we'll be focusing in on, of course, books that went on sale from Street Smith and United Features. They kind of taking a brief look at Tip Top number 50, which of course had such features as Tarzan, Ella Cinders, Little Mary Make Believe, or Billy Make Believe, Little Mary Mix Up, among others. And we'll be doing most of our reading from the Street Smith side of it, from Shadow Comics number 5, of course, featuring The Shadow and Arn Monroe. So with that, I thank everybody for being here tonight. Hope it the show, and I hope to see everybody back here on Sunday. Bye.